Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad that you are here for this conversation with Harold Budd here at the Toledo Museum of Art. I couldn't really believe it when he arrived in Toledo on Thursday night and was at Bowling Green for a conversation with students and faculty at the College of Musical Arts. And then there was this extraordinary concert last night. How many of you were here for the show last night? Oh, please, go ahead and... Yeah, it was an extraordinary night, and what a beautiful evening in the Peristyle with so many of Harold's fans. And here we are, sort of a casual Sunday afternoon now in the museum galleries to continue talking about music and art. I'm Scott Bober, manager of programs, and thank you to all of you who not only support the museum but support music, and we're so enthusiastic about this. I want to thank a few people. Kurt Doles, who's in the audience in Bowling Green State University. He runs the Mid-American Center for Contemporary Music. Give him a round of applause. He was on board instantaneously when I floated the possibility that Harold might come to Toledo. I also want to thank the sponsors of this residency, 3 days, Robert and Rose Wagner, and also the Dorothy Price Mackenzie Fund. And also any members, if you're a member of the Toledo Museum of Art, raise your hand. All right, thank you. Give a round of applause to all those people I mentioned for their support. Harold, Scott, any thoughts on last night, the experience here in Toledo in the Peristyle, the concert that you want to start with? There's a lot of things we could talk about last night, but what's your biggest memory from last night?
Oh, far and away, it's the people I work with. Really, my colleagues. They're miles ahead of me. All of them.
A little closer.
They are miles ahead of me.
All right. Well, that was an extraordinary, and I'll just go ahead and mention the people who were involved. There was this group of musicians from Toledo who we've worked with a lot over the 4 years that I've been here, and we gave them a name for last night, the Soma Ensemble, TSOMA. It's a combination of TSO and TMA. It acknowledges our connectivity with them, and that was Merwin Sue and Cheryl Trace on violin, Kalindi Belloc on viola, and Brian Snow on cello. And they were joined by Sean Connors of Third Coast Percussion on that opening performance, Lirio, and then Dan Piccolo, who concluded with the final bit of percussion on the program. So give them all a round of applause. It was pretty magical, and I have to say that that people came from a long way. I see a new friend of the museum who came from Washington, D.C. We had people come from Texas and California and Chicago and Europe, all over. Pittsburgh was represented, Detroit. Thank you to all of you from Detroit who broke down the Toledo-Detroit wall. We're doing it one concert at a time, and it's going to be great moving forward. But there were a lot of happy folks.
Okay, yes, it's good to talk about those people because they
Hold it closer.
No joke. These people really know what they're doing. They've known what they're doing for a long time, and it's a humbling lesson to me, who is rather isolated, really. And I don't get to see other people's skill very often. And when I do, I'm an audience. I watch them. They don't know it, but I am, for sure.
one of the stories we didn't talk about in the pre-concert talk, but it was such a lovely sound, was what you would call it a celeste or a celeste. That was a beautiful, beautiful incorporation from the suite called Petit Souffle.
I tell you, it was just a hunch. I didn't know if it would work or not, and it did. I had never touched a celeste in my life, and when I found out how hard it is to actually play the damn thing, it was appalling. But I did my best and pretended like I'd done it all my life, which is a complete fabrication. So forgive me if, well, anyway, or don't forgive me. I should have been smarter. I don't know.
I love the story that you told about your original interest in celeste. Can you talk about sort of
yes,
that? That's such a good story.
Happily. This is back in the early 50s. There used to be a place, my music education, the Hellwood College, all I learned about in college was that Brahms was the most boring composer who ever lived. And I hung out at a place called Music City at Sunset and Vine. And you could listen to LPs prior to buying them. Well, I never bought an LP there in my life, but I listened to everything all the time. And one thing I listened to was the first recording that I ever heard by Sun Ra, the great free jazz dude. First of all, I heard Sun Ra for the first time, but I heard him playing a solo celeste, 3 minutes long. I thought to myself, this is absolutely amazing. And what the hell does that sound? And it was a celeste. And I had to find out what it was. Well, I did find out, of course, but I never played the damn thing. And, well, because I didn't have a celeste. I didn't have anything. I couldn't even pay the damned album I was listening to. So, you know, that's it. Celeste, Sun Ra, I will cherish him for the rest of my life.
So I love that you channeled that last night in the Paris style. About the same time, well, or a little bit later in the late 1950s, you were playing drums in the Army.
I was.
I was playing with Albert Ayler, and we were. It's not because we just. Well, I knew who he was, and he was. He became. Well, he became Albert Ayler. In the Army band, he was just a guy that played the sax badly, according to the Army. And I pride myself on thinking he's the only one who's making any sense in this damned Army. And we talked a lot about mostly jazz. I mean, that was his life, of course. No surprise there. But, well, one thing led to another, and we played in small clubs, mostly black clubs in Monterey, California. And my job was to be a drummer. That's all I did. And I wanted to be like Max Roach or Sonny Murray, but I didn't have those skills. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pull it off at all. But I tried my damnedest, and I loved doing it. And Albert was, he was on another planet, a la Sun Ra. Wonderful man. I cherish a few memories of him, and when I heard that he had passed away, not well, but violently, and I was aggrieved, and well, that's it. I mean, that's the end of the story. I got out of the army and became a student, so I wouldn't be stupid all my life. Didn't work. I'm still stupid. But either went on to become legendary as far as I'm concerned. He's an absolutely remarkable artist. He used to talk about them old guys, i.e. old Coleman Hawkins and Sonny Rollins. Them old guys. As if it was a crime. But but I think really to him it's not being old, but standing in the way of someone who really wants to get past them. And that kind of thinking was a huge block to Albert. He couldn't get past I mean, for heaven's sake, Stan Getz with Gilberto, as marvelous as it is, it prevented somebody like Albert from making a living, even a bad living. Well, anyway, that's my gripe, period.
One of the things about this residency that was so remarkable, because of course, having Harold Budd perform here just on musical terms alone is more than enough. But there is something about your lifelong love of visual art that that keeps manifesting itself in your music, and sometimes in the titles specifically. And I just wanted to mention, because I'm amazed that my colleagues actually agreed to do this, because normally this painting here by Agnes Martin lives 4 galleries down. And it's a lovely spot. But when I explained that Harold was coming here and had a track on this wonderful album called Luxa, which I encourage you all to get a copy of and listen to, I said, we need to move it out here where we're going to do the artist talk, because we knew we wanted to be in front of this Mark Rothko. And we'll talk about Rothko in a second. But what if we actually moved them together for you? And immediately our director, Brian Kennedy, said, yeah, let's do it. And they look great together. You were just admiring this Agnes Martin.
Oh, I'm flattered. I'm speechless. I'm very flattered. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sometimes there's persuasive moments like that.
It wasn't until maybe a year ago that I first saw an Agnes Martin with any colors at all. Up until then, it had all been black and white. Really, her kind of signature. But these are lovely. I saw these 1 or 2 year and a half ago, something like that. My partner would know. And at LA County Museum of Art, unpopulated, of course, but a wonderful show. And I saw probably this one, I'm sure. But they're wonderful. Yeah, she was something else.
Definitely come up and look. Well, explore her work in general, but come up and look at this painting, particularly in the light we have in this gallery. Mark Rothko, there is this amazing body of work. I know in the mid 1960s, thereabouts, 1965 or so, you wrote a piece of music for Mark Rothko.
I did. And it wasn't actually for him, because I didn't have a clue that he was even alive. But I saw a painting of his, a large red one, in a magazine. No, it was a art history book, kind of mid-60s. Okay, so I saw for the first time, the first thing that attracted my attention was a painting by Sam Francis called Blue Balls. I then turned page after page after page, and suddenly this humongous red specter showed up in front of me. It was Rothko. I never heard of him, didn't know anything about it. Never heard of anyone, didn't know anything about anyone else. And well, it had such an impact on me. I swear to God, it changed my life. And it was years before I actually saw a real Rothko. And it still, I swear to God, was not the same impact that running across it in an art book had on me at the time. But I was naive, I didn't know anything. And this just well, took my breath away. And I've never forgotten it. So I was finishing up graduate school at USC, a very, very conservative school. And nonetheless, I wrote for a large symphony orchestra a piece called Analogies from Rothko. Very pretentious of me, extremely pretentious of me, but I did it anyway. And I sent it to his gallery, which was in Marlborough in New York, and never heard of a thing. Of course not, because I didn't have any return address on it. But maybe 2 or 3 years later, I came across, I became friends with Morton Feldman, the composer, and he said, did you write a piece with Mark in mind? And I said, yes, that's me. And he said, that touched him very much, and he would love to respond to you. And I said, well, okay, I'd be enormously flattered. Well, I'll be damned, but I got a letter from Rothko. And I was living in Silver Lake at the time, and never fell down the steps of the hill. And I rushed upstairs with it and read it, and he said, if you ever come to New York, and like the next week I was on my way to New York. So first of all, my first stop was Feldman, who lived in the Village. And I arranged to meet Feldman for coffee. And I met him at his flat, and he said, that Rothko, that piece you wrote for Rothko was touched him greatly. And I said, well, that's wonderful. He said, would you like to, shall we go over and meet him? I said, well, hell yes, of course. So we got on the phone, and the phone conversation was like this, literally. Mark, Mort, Harold Budd is here. Click. I said, okay, we're taking the subway. That was it. I spent the whole entire day and most of the evening drinking scotch, smoking Camel cigarettes, and he was in the middle of doing the chapel, the painting that would turn out to be the chapel. And he told me what he was doing and what colors he was choosing, and they're almost all too bright, and I'm darkening them, and the stretcher's bars have to be changed every morning because I change my mind. And I think, Jesus Christ, this guy is, this man is not fooling around. This is the real item. I'm thinking myself, of course. that's it. And I saw the Rothko Chapel before it was a chapel. That's it. But it's just chance. I mean, it wasn't because of me. But drinking scotch and smoking Camel cigarettes all day, in 8 hours, is quite a challenge.
Well, here you are to tell the tale.
Oh yeah,
That's great.
I know. I'm still partly alive. Yeah.
Well, there's so many ways or places we can go in the conversation, but one of the things that I was thinking about, because we were talking about Albert Eiler, but I also wanted to bring in Marion Brown into the conversation.
Yes.
And that really leads to the first album I heard of yours and bought, which was Pavilion of Dreams, which included Pieces for and with Marion Brown. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with him?
Happily. He was a grand friend, or a really, really close friend. For a while, there it is. Got it.
Thanks, Joe.
Look at that punk on the back.
Oh yeah. You got to see this haircut up close. Wow, that's amazing. All right.
So anyway, Marion Brown. So, as usual, I was hanging out in Santa Barbara with my friend Daniel Lentz, and he got a phone call during dinner time and then he hung up and said, Hal, there's a guy named Elliot Schwartz, who's a modern music composer from Bowdoin College, and he wants to come by and see me. And I said, well, great, I'll pack up and go. And he said, no, stay. He's on the road with Marion Brown. He said, I don't know who Marion Brown is, but I knew exactly who that was, and I said, I want to stay. They came over, and they were on the road with some nonsense, academic nonsense. At the time, Marion was the head of African American music at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. So we stayed around, and I got to meet Marion, and we got on. We really bonded immediately. Terribly nice guy. And at the end of the evening, Marion said to me, would you write a piece for me for my horn? And I said, yes, I will. I will write it happily. And the very next day, I began. And it took a while. Well, who cares about that? But I did. And I sent it on to Marion. And, I don't know what else to say. We performed it at Wesleyan University. Percussion was played by Ed Blackwell, John Coltrane's drummer, and keyboards by Stanley Cowell and me. Yeah. And stuff like that. So it was, that was it. And Marion playing sax, of course, and it was the piece. Well, it turns out that Gavin Bryars, Barney Childs gave Gavin Bryars a copy of that piece, that performance at Wesleyan University. And within a month, I got a phone call from Brian Eno, and he said, introduced ourselves on the phone. He said, is this the sort of music that you always write? And I said, well, yes. He said, would you like to come to London and record it? I said, yes. And so that was my first trip to London. And it came about. And beforehand, he said, we have a really great saxophonist who can played this piece marvelously. He said, "Oh no, I can't. I'm sorry, but I wrote it for Marion, and it belongs with him. Even if it means not recording it, that's the way it goes. But I cannot do it otherwise." So Brian got the money to bring Marion over, and so we did it. Recording studio in a great part of West London, in the Portobello Road is in the Jamaican area of London. Great recording studio. The first time I'd ever seen a recording studio like that. I've seen a lot of microphones and tape machines, but I've never seen anything remotely like this. Of course, Eno's completely into it. They'd never thought twice about it, or at least it seemed to me. And he had just left Roxy Music, and he spent a good 15 minutes telling me what an a-hole Brian Ferry is. So, okay, that's my Eno.
You heard it here. The track that Brad Cresswell played the other day on the radio, Juno, it just has this lovely combination of instruments on it. But I love the kind of backstory, particularly the backup singers on that particular track.
The backup singers, yeah. There's unfortunately me, but there's also Eno, and there's Michael Nyman and Gavin Bryars, and that quartet is singing. That's what we do.
That would have been a hell of a barbershop quartet right there. So one of the things that keeps coming up, and for those of you who know Herald's music, are these collaborative partnerships that you embarked on. Do you want to talk about some of the people that you particularly resonated with?
Absolutely. Most of them, in fact, every one of them have become lifelong friends after we did our stuff together. But it was all a hunch. Everything was a hunch. Andy Partridge, I knew that I was never going to be a member of XTC. That was out of the question.
That would have been amazing.
John Cox, I was never going to join Outlaws. Stuff like that. But it's okay. We all bonded together and still have wonderful friendships and great emails, and we keep in touch all the time. Yeah, really. It's so marvelous. And I must say, I'm a little bit prejudiced towards the British sensibility. They have a very, very much more open mind than Americans that I've come across, to be honest with you. And they're very, very much more liberal in their attitudes about the divisions between music, i.e. there frequently are none at all. Robin Guthrie, who is very, very close, has been for a number of years, since 1986. Well, that's it. Robin is new family, and he lives in France. He's moving, he threatened to Tucson, Arizona. I thought, bitchin', I'm gonna go down there. Stuff like that. They're all good friends. My idea always is I hate to keep using the word hunch, but punch is so important to my life. I just figured it's something is there. I don't know what it is. I can't put my hand on it. I'm not an analytical person to begin with. But in any case, I feel there's something happening, and something that's going to happen that either works or doesn't work. But even if it doesn't work, it's worth a try. And with Andy Partridge, the album didn't work out. It's not very good, I'm sorry to say. But I made it a lifelong friend, and I laughed my ass off. He is hands down, the funniest guy I've ever met in my life, and remains that. He's outrageous. But talking, he doesn't do stupid tricks or anything remotely like that. But a lovely man. And I think he has a good life. He should. Well, all right. Oh, and one more I must mention. The great Jah Wobble. He is a delicious man. He absolutely is. I mean, he owns the bass. And we did a concert at the Brighton Pavilion a number of years ago. We improvised a good 30 minutes of the concert. And poor Robin Guthrie was playing his spatial guitar and standing next to the humongous loudspeaker through which Jah Wobble was whacking his bass. And I imagine Guthrie still says that I'm still hearing that bass line 10 years later. Yeah, it was very painful for Robin, but not for me. I thought it was great. Very selfish.
This seems like a good group of people, don't you think? Should we open it up to some questions from them? See what they want to know?
Christ, yes, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, all right. I'm John.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for being in Toledo and sharing your music with us. There's so many places I could go with questions. I've been a fan for a long time. One of them was just answered about Marion Brown, so thank you for asking that question. There's in the program yesterday, I noticed one of the compositions was for David Sylvian.
Yes.
And I'm a huge Sylvian fan as well, and I'm curious if you could share with us what your connection is with David Sylvian, and have you worked together, or you just know one another, or just know one of each other's music, or how did that go about?
David Sylvian and I know one another, but that's all. We have never worked together and never planned to. But in my humble opinion, he is the great artist of this last part of the 20th century. I revere his mind and his music.
If I may do a follow-up,
Yeah, please.
Since you are in contact with him, he's very not secretive. He's very personal, kind of person. At least the way that I get, the way I analyze what I hear. I don't know him personally, and I heard that he's sick, that he's not feeling well. He's maybe a terminal illness of some sort. I mean, I just want to know that he's okay. Is he okay? We don't hear anything really.
No, he's changed his mind about the path that he's taken in music. He tried for a while to be more, quote, European avant-garde, a la Stockhausen, and that sort of thing. In my mind, it never worked, but I would never say anything because this is where he wanted to go. But he left what I would call the existential yearning and loneliness that he expressed in so much of his music. He left it, and I'm sorry he did. But he said he's going somewhere else. He's taking another tack, but it's not unclear what it is, and he probably doesn't know either. I mean, once you do something like that, no joke. You can't go back. You have to live with it, and even if you cringe, you still have to live with it. And I think he's in the cringing stage of his art. It reminds me. It must be very much like Philip Gaston, I think, who gave up his abstract expressionist fame for being Philip Gaston, whose art I do not admire at all. But I mean, he's the real thing anyway, and who cares what I think?
There's a Philip Guston few galleries over, so check that out. In case you're interested, museum's open till 5. Go ahead.
First, I want to thank you so much for coming. I've been looking forward to this weekend live.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So wonderful. You have such a large collection of work, and I'm still working on collecting all of your physical albums. You have such a specific sound, which I think is really important for someone who's been around for decades. You know, when I hear Harold Blood on piano, I know it's Harold Blood on piano. It's really great. Do you find that there's been one album or one time in your life that really you feel like is the best piece of work? You know, one album that you grew the most from, or something?
I'm really happy to say two things. First of all, let me clear up one thing. I'm not a musician, and I used to be able to say, well, I'm not a musician. Just listen to my albums. Okay, so that doesn't work anymore. But my favorite album, which I fondly refer to whenever I do listen again to myself, which is very rare, is The Serpent in Quicksilver, which is 1981, one of my very first, and the one I hold so dear to my heart. Not because it's great, believe me, because it's flawed beyond belief, maybe eternally, but I don't care. It's my album, and I carried tapes around with me from studio to studio in Southern California, I carried tapes around with me, and I made arrangements in studios that I could afford, so I wasn't in really great studios ever. But that was a work of love. I mean, really, I'm very proud of myself and very happy I could pull it off. But I didn't think it would go anywhere, and in a way, it didn't. I mean, it's not going to change anyone's life, but it certainly changed mine. Sure.
I guess we chose the right walk-in music last night, so thanks for Doles. Okay.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay, so 1966, 1973, Larry Austin, Source of Magazine. So you gave us a really quick interview. Do you mind if I read the statement and then the question? And it's about music politics. Do you remember this? I was going to ask you, have you or anybody else used your music for political or social ends?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, so you know.
If you want to come up, you can use the microphone. Yep, come on.
Okay, so in 1966, 1973,
A little further away from the Agnes part.
Both.
There you go. Okay, so in 1966, 1970, or 1973, 74, you had an interview in Source Magazine. Oh. Yeah, and they were talking about, you were talking about music as well as and do you mind if I read the statement?
I don't know.
All right, so someone had asked you, have you or anyone else used your music for political or social ends? And then your response, I think it's kind of comical. You say, no, not that I know of. However, I don't think artists can stand around and scratch their nuts by people like being shot by police. I'm glad giving people the opportunity to express their views. So, in that regard, can you you still feel the same way about your music when it comes to politics?
What else can I say?
Another question. Yes, please.
I'm curious if you refer to yourself as working in isolation, and I'm curious if you ever feel, do you know who your audience is? Do you have a sense of the listener?
Never, absolutely never. No, I don't know. I'm always surprised. You haven't a clue. I am surprised. Believe me, I am. And it's true, I do work in isolation because, I have no choice. Really. This is the way it's been since I started getting really serious. The other part of being serious, by the way, is so obvious, but I'll remind everyone anyway, it's making a goddamn living. And that's no cinch.
You moved around from label to label, it seems, throughout your work.
Yeah.
Your work is spread out over different catalogs.
Yeah.
I'm curious if that was a deliberate thing or if that was...
No, it happens. It happens. I remember taking for a while, I always consulted a lawyer, a professional, to look over a contract before I signed it, which was a very smart thing of me. But I remember taking a contract from Warner Brothers Records and taking it to an honest guy who said, "Well, this is only mediocre. You know, it's okay. You can go ahead and sign it. You won't be hurt at all." But it said, yeah, in all my years of experience, I can promise you that this contract will be broken within 2 years. And he was right. Broken by them. So there's nothing I can do about that. I had a what was the last one? The last one, that only happens with big labels, and that doesn't happen to me very often. But I do have one record on Atlantic Records, which did me very well. But voila, I got a letter from Atlantic Records informing me that you might as well kiss your ass goodbye because you're not lasting with us. And I asked people around, and everybody, like 250 artists, were just dropped suddenly. And I was at the bottom of the totem pole financially. I was certainly one of those that went. So you never know, really. You're not responsible, and what can I say? It happens, but it's no plan if you're kind of inching towards that way. No plans at all. And with David Sylvian, for example, he was dropped by Virgin and then started his own label, which went very well for maybe 5-6 years. But that's it. You have no choice. And he had other artists. He had me, obviously, but he had I can't remember who, but anyway, Sylvian has a lot of connections, so he was able to attract a number of people. But it didn't last. and it's not because I didn't want to go on or because I don't think Sylvan is worthwhile doing business with. Nothing of the sort. It just didn't work. It disappears. The rug is pulled out from under you, and you get up off the floor and walk somewhere else.
I am keeping an eye on the clock and want to make sure there's a time for you to visit with folks who are here. Want to say hello, if that's okay with you.
Of course. It's
Okay. But before, you've spent a lot of time in the museum now,
Yes.
and I think we're ready to deputize you as a liaison for the museum. What would you recommend in the time that they have today if they want to see a work of art? What have you noticed that you think they should go see?
Listen, I'm sure you have all gone through the same thing. You turn a corner and suddenly, my God Almighty, look at that. I thought, for example, El Greco, Agony in the Garden. This is a famous piece. I mean, no joke. When books is the chapter on mannerism, El Greco right in front. Oh, here it is. It's here. It's just 100 yards across. It's there. I mean, that's astounding. To me, it's astounding. For example, but my favorite so far, small glance at many things, is a René Lalique little gem of a little pen called, I misidentified the flower the other day. I said it was lilacs, but it's not.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but we'll go look.
Yeah, no, it's a beauty. I mean, you'll walk right by it, but it's René Lalique, who's one of my heroes for decorative art. And decorative art, basically, the whole notion of decorative art. I would love to talk with you someday about that, because I want to put out to you, I think all art is essentially decorative and has no function. And I'm going to get in so much trouble from you guys. But good, let's fight about it. Okay.
Well, I would be okay with Harold Budd coming back to do a lecture on decorative arts. I don't know about you. I just want to thank you all for being here. Thanks again for coming out to Toledo. Please give Harold Budd a round of applause.